Did you know that a single winter once caused an entire nation to eat their own children? Well, in this video I'm going to tell you exactly how that happened. It all started in the year 1315, when a freak cold wave hit Europe. The summer before had been unseasonably warm and wet, leading farmers to plant late into the season. But as soon as autumn rolled around, temperatures plummeted. Winter arrived early with a vengeance, dumping copious amounts of snow across the continent. Rivers froze over, roads were impassable. People couldn't hunt because the animals had all gone into hiding and food supplies began to dwindle. Throughout January and February, temperatures remained far below freezing. In England, King Edward II ordered the royal stores to be opened so that people could have access to grain. But within a month, those supplies ran out. By March, the situation was desperate. As one chronicler put it, cold, heat, and drought never endured longer or did more harm than during this year. To make matters even worse, the crops failed yet again. Spring arrived, but with it came frost and storms which destroyed what little had been planted. It was then that widespread famine truly began. In some places, the only thing that people could afford to eat was snow, which they either boiled or ground into powder and mixed with other foods to stretch them out. By the time summer rolled around again, millions of Europeans were starving, and unlike today, there was no easy solution to fix the problem. No one could just go down to the supermarket and buy some food. In fact, the best chance that anyone had of getting food was to beg for it. And if that didn't work, then their only other option was to steal it. The first recorded case of cannibalism during this famine comes from April 13, 1315, when a man named Adam was caught trying to steal a loaf of bread. He was sentenced to death, and his body was given to the executioner's family to eat. Over the next few weeks, more and more cases of cannibalism were reported. In Lorraine, a woman named Margaret Houghton was accused of killing her own daughter and then cooking her in an iron pot. When asked why she had done it, she responded by the love of God and for the love of good eating. In another case, a farmer named Simon von der Mark was summoned to court after his neighbor found a human heart and liver in his stew. When asked about it, he replied that he had found the organs in the forest and that he had no idea whose they were. That excuse didn't wash, and after being tortured, he confessed to killing and eating the son of a tanner named Conrad Clausen. But Simon wasn't working alone. Soon enough, other nobles were dragged into the scandal, including Duke Philip the Bold of Burgundy, who was accused of hosting a banquet where roasted human flesh was served. As the years went by, things only got worse. More and more people resorted to desperate measures just to stay alive. According to one contemporary account, beggars would line up outside rich people's houses and offer to do anything just for a single scrap of food. They would say, "We are so wretched, we are so miserable, we are so poor, that unless you give us something to eat, we shall die of hunger and miserably. And if opportunity offers, we shall eat our own flesh." And oftentimes the people inside would agree to give them money, but instead of giving it to the beggars, they would eat it themselves. One writer described this disturbing trend as a plague of avarice, which causes men to devour themselves. This dark period in history eventually came to be known as the Great Famine, and it lasted for 5 long years. It wiped out nearly 1/3 of the population of Europe and fundamentally altered the course of history. For starters, the famine greatly weakened the English monarchy. King Edward II had already borrowed tons of money from wealthy subjects to fund his lavish lifestyle and wars in Scotland. But when the famine hit, tax revenue dried up, and the country descended into chaos. Bandits roamed the countryside, preying on villagers and noblemen alike. And at one point, the king had to flee for his life when angry mobs tried to storm the Tower of London. Eventually, Edward's wife, Queen Isabella, conspired with the French to depose him and place their son on the throne. Although the plot ultimately failed and Edward lived for another 3 years, the damage had already been done. His son, the future Edward III, spent much of his youth wandering around the country, disguised as a peasant just to get food. And when he finally took the throne, he went to war with France to try and claim the French crown for himself. But perhaps the biggest legacy of the Great Famine is the way that it changed people, as attitudes towards poverty and charity. Throughout most of medieval history, extreme poverty had been considered a person's own fault. After all, there were plenty of jobs that paid well, like working in a mine or as a servant. But after the famine, when people saw that ordinary folk could suddenly find themselves destitute through no fault of their own, attitudes towards poverty began to change. Many Christians started to believe that helping the poor was not only a good thing, but a moral imperative. Even better, people realized that they could help the poor without sacrificing anything themselves. Instead of giving money directly to the poor, which was expensive, they could simply pay the church to pray for the poor. Before long, praying for the dead became one of the most lucrative businesses in Christianity. So while the Great Famine was undoubtedly a terrible event, it did have some positive outcomes. The Black Death, which hit Europe shortly after the famine, killed even more people. And it was arguably the worst plague in the history of humanity. Want to learn how it started and how it spread? Check out this video. If you found this interesting or learned something new, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more awesome content like this. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.